And welcome back to This Week in Politics here on KSFY as we continue our look at mass shootings in America. From January through July of this year, there were 248 mass shootings, that according to the Gun Violence Archive. Of those, a total of 979 people were shot, 246 of them died. And those statistics do not include the 31 killed and 51 injured last weekend in El Paso and Dayton. We were able to speak with Chris Brown, who is the president of the Brady Campaign to Prevent Gun Violence, about that group's efforts to stop this violence from happening.
It's a really hard thing to watch and see the reactions of people and then hear the stories of the mother who attempted to save herself and her child and ultimately succumbed to her injuries. The mother had a 2-month-old. The father was also shot and killed.
Brady Campaign Against Gun Violence President Chris Brown is talking about Andre and Jordan and Chando. They're two of the 22 people who died in the El Paso shootings.
We have policy solutions that would actually prevent many of these kinds of atrocities from occurring.
Brown is most immediately concerned with H.R. 8 and H.R. 1112, measures passed by the U.S. House 6 months ago that would prohibit person-to-person gun sales unless a background check could be conducted. And it would also extend the time a gun dealer must wait for a response from the background check system before a sale can proceed from 3 days to 10 days. While the House has approved these measures, they have not been brought to the Senate floor for consideration.
The Senate is sitting on them. They're stalled with Mitch McConnell. And this president, really with his rhetoric, has incited a lot of what we've seen in the last couple of days. So that's very upsetting.
In the weeks since the shootings in El Paso and Dayton, there have been several calls to action. One of them has dealt with mental illness, with several lawmakers and gun advocates saying they don't believe it's the weapons that are the problem, but the people who are wielding the weapons, and that it's not gun laws that need to be changed, but programs enacted to help those with mental illness or other personal problems. Chris Brown says she does not believe that is the real problem.
If you want to get to the root of the problem, you have to focus on what's causing the problem. And it's not mental illness in this country. Certainly mental illness is something I'd love to see this administration invest in a serious way and not try to undermine the kind of care that is needed for people who are mentally ill. But the reality is America doesn't have any more incidents of mental illness than any other industrialized country. We have a lot more gun violence because we have a lot more guns.
In the case of the El Paso shootings, the gunman used an AK-47 style rifle. In Dayton, it was a .223 caliber high-capacity weapon using 100-round drum magazines, which would allow the gunman to shoot 100 rounds before having to pause and reload. Chris Brown says more restrictions need to be placed on weapons like these.
Why is it that in America we think it's appropriate to sell these kinds of weapons for consumer use? They're not good for home defense. You can't use them for hunting. We don't think it's fair to use these to hunt animals. So why are we selling them to consumers in the public today?
The seeds of the Brady campaign were planted in 1981 from another incidence of gun violence, an assassination attempt in March of that year against then-President Ronald Reagan, where Reagan ended up taking a bullet in the chest. But his press secretary, James Brady, was shot near point blank in the head. He survived but was disabled, but began the Brady campaign to protect future generations from gun violence.
None of us is immune to this. And so ultimately, I think that for Americans today, looking at these headlines and understanding these were just shoppers at Walmart, going because it was a tax-free day, buying school supplies for their kids. And then the story is the same for the people going to the synagogue who get shot, to the people who go to church who get shot, to the movies, to a baseball park, to a concert. And the reality is, we're fed up with this.
Brady Campaign Against Gun Violence President Chris Brown sharing some of her thoughts with us tonight.